Dear Chloe, I've been in really good spirits lately. I have a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of curiosity, and when I feel good, I like to cook. And in my cooking adventures, I've always wondered one thing. Do one-pot recipes work? I mean, a recipe that is quick, easy, delicious, and with minimal cleanup sounds too good to be true. So I went on YouTube and found the first video on one-pot recipes I can find, which was this video from Tasty. I picked 3 recipes from the video and I made them this week to see if I can make a one-pot recipe work for me. Now, some notes before we get started. I watched the Tasty video, picked out 3 recipes that I was interested in, and then I found those recipes on Tasty's website. I also cut the recipes in half because I was only feeding myself and Michael. Finally, I tried to follow the recipe as closely as possible to the absolute best of my abilities, because there's absolutely no way that I would purposefully ruin a whole pot of food just for a video. We'll do these 3 recipes in order from my highest to lowest expectations, starting with recipe number 1, sausage and peppers pasta. I felt pretty confident going into this recipe because you cook the pasta and the meat separately. The hard part about one-pot meals that cook the pasta in the sauce is that it can be very hard to get both of them right. Either the pasta is gummy and overcooked, or the sauce is too starchy and actually starts to clump up. This one is very straightforward. Cook the pasta, then the meat, then the veggies, and then boom, voila, a perfect pasta dish. Now, I accidentally cooked the diced tomato a little bit too much, so I cooked off too much of the moisture, but other than that, it looked great, it smelled great. The pasta was perfectly cooked, the meat was perfectly cooked. I was impressed by how simple the preparation was and how quick it got from pot to table.
If you do your prep while the water's boiling, then that's probably a total of like 40 minutes from start to end.
It was easy, fast, and it looked good. Little side note, Michael and I got vaccinated against the Backstreet Boys reunion tour the day before we filmed this. We were feeling kind of sick, feverish, chilly, achy, fatigued.
Just the timing is very unfortunate.
And we're both just miserably sick.
But despite how sick we were feeling, the dish still tasted really good.
Sausage, I love sausage, so it's just, no, it's great.
Yeah.
I love it, yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, like the more that I eat it, I'm just like, oh, it is good.
Overall, I thought this was a really good recipe.
Would we make this again?
Give me some of that.
Break me off a piece of that ass.
Bye, everyone.
Recipe number 2, creamy chicken and broccoli pasta. Now, about 30% of the recipes on the video followed a similar pattern. Step 1, cook the meat. Step 2, boil the veggies and pasta in either broth or milk. And step 3, destroy it with cheese. So I picked the creamy chicken and broccoli pasta as a representative for this kind of recipe. Now, the comments underneath the recipe mentioned a few potential issues. Some people mentioned that the broccoli was overcooked, and you can cut the amount of milk in half and still have a functioning recipe. That means you have too much milk in your recipe. Most Alfredo sauces use half broth, half milk, or they cook it only in the broth and add a splash of cream at the very end. But this recipe calls for 6 cups of milk and 2 cups of cheese. So I could already tell that the dish was going to be too heavy for me. And from previous experience with mac and cheese, it can be hard to get a good cheese sauce. Milk can curdle or scorch, cheese can seize up or break the sauce. And with the pasta starch added in as well, I was very skeptical that this was going to work. But how bad could it possibly be? Well, it started with...
I mean, I'll still eat it.
Yeah,
it's
like-
not too bad.
And then by the end,
You would have to pay me money.
I broke the sauce for sure. Halfway through cooking the sauce, the pasta was not done, but I was running out of milk in which to cook it. So I threw in some more water to try to, reconstitute it, but I really hope that doesn't fuck up the sauce. It could have also been when I was doing the cheese. At some point in the process, the sauce broke. But I can't tell if the sauce broke because of the starch, because of the cheese, or the milk, the heat. There's a lot of variables.
Eat all the above.
The sauce looks all right in the final shot. It looks pretty velvety and creamy, but you can already start to see little clumps forming on the pasta and the vegetables. It only got worse the longer that it sat, until eventually it was completely solid.
The longer I don't eat it, and then I come back to it, it's like, no.
Even if the sauce was not broken, which could have been my fault, the flavor is still too sweet and too heavy for me to enjoy. Milk is pretty much sugar and protein water. So without any chicken stock or anything else to kind of have it or balance it out, it's just really, really overwhelmingly creamy and sweet.
I will say, the chicken's really good.
Cooking a pasta in the sauce, I want it to work so badly. I just don't know how to
You're
do it.
obsessed with pursuing the perfect sauce.
Did we make this again?
No. You want to wrap this up?
Yeah. And finally, recipe number 3, chicken chow mein. Now I picked this recipe because of one remark that I found in the comments section. The chow mein one physically hurt me. My grandmother would strangle you. And this video did physically hurt me. Stir fries, even with noodles, aren't really that hard to make, so what could possibly go wrong here? For starters, stir-fry sauces usually have cornstarch that thicken the sauce while it's cooking, which this recipe doesn't have. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, maybe they're relying on the starch from the noodles. I also must have picked some big-ass carrots because I used 2 carrots like the recipe told me, and I had way too many carrots. So I made an executive decision to cut down the amount of carrot I was using in this recipe, the only time I chose to do so. Wait, no, that's not. Nope, I made a lot of executive decisions during this cooking process because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. Like in the last recipe, cooked chicken is pretty much foolproof, so there's not much to worry about here. But then we start frying with sesame oil and there's too many vegetables in the pot, and then what the hell are we doing here? Immediately, I knew that the vegetables would be too soft. Stir fries are about frying the vegetables to make them crisp, not steaming them and making them soft. Needless to say, I was very scared. I'm not excited. I'm not excited. It's just me today. It's not terrible. I mean, well, the fun part about eating chow mein is the difference between the noodles, which can either be soft or in like a chow mein, they can be like hard and fried up. And then the vegetables are all crisp tender, really crunchy, so it adds some nice texture, and then the meat is obviously always good. The texture on this is really off. The noodles and all the julienne vegetables, they have the exact same texture. Really soft, really mushy. The flavor itself is not bad. It's a little bit too heavy on the ginger for my taste, but the sauce is good. Some parts of the noodle just aren't cooked all the way through. The noodles that were on top that were supposed to be steamed by the veggies didn't really get steamed as much as I needed it to be. Ugh, excuse me. Ugh. Unlike the pasta recipe, which would be very difficult to save, I think this recipe would work if you just cooked the noodles separately. Pre-cook the chicken, and then quickly stir-fry the vegetables so that they're still crisp, and then throw everything together with the sauce at the end so that the sauce coats everything. I think that would be a huge improvement on the texture without really that much more effort. It's a lot better. I think this dish is okay. She just does not need to be a one-pot recipe. If I make this again as a one-pot recipe, no. You treat yourself with love and respect and kindness, and then you pull out an extra pot when you really need it, because you're worth it. So in conclusion, what did I learn from this experience? I found out that I have a really hard time cooking pasta in a sauce. I personally feel more comfortable cooking the pasta and the sauce separately because I have more control over each individual component. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't add that much extra effort. Even if you use a separate pasta pot on the side, one more pot probably isn't going to kill you compared to the stress of making sure that the pasta is done, but also that the sauce isn't fucked. Then again, this is only 3 recipes, and I'm sure that there's plenty more out there that I can try, and maybe with a little bit more experience, I'll actually learn how to balance that timing better. But I'm gonna keep an eye out for more one-pot recipes because I wanna find something that works, for me, particularly. Good luck and happy cooking. Sincerely, Chloe.